for you. I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
Yeah. You want to kick it off, or yeah.
Yeah. So this is. Okay, so my name is Noble Bratton. Let's see. I'm a longtime union activist, comes from a union family, and we kind of like love movies, right? And so Manny called me up and said, yeah, you got ideas for a panel. And so I said, well, yeah, I should do something about, maybe black films like that. And Kenneth suggested, he said, why don't you, we were talking about this films and things. He said, why don't you check out this thing I Mix What I Like by Jared Ball? And I said, oh yeah, I remember Jared Ball because I met him at the Harlem Book Fair years ago with this, about this book on Malcolm X and the problems with the Marable book.
Right. Okay, right.
Right, problems with the Marable book. And I said, I'd like me to, but it's been a long time. He says, well, he does this thing I Mix What I Like. I said, yeah, I hear about it. So I checked it out. I said, oh, yeah. Then I checked out the thing with them and Mr. Gant here. I said, oh, yeah, I wonder if we could do this for the panel. So I suggested to Manny, then I got in touch with them. They said, yeah, we'd love to do it. So, boom, we're here. And, that's how that got started. So, yeah, but, I've been to several left forums and just remember the Black Radical Congress. A Philip Randolph Institute taught some classes for the Marxist Education Project, stuff like that. That's part of it. So, so let's just get it started. So,
No, peace everybody. I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be here, and a professor and media maker and supporter of activist efforts. And I have long thought. My academic career sort of forced a focus on this, but I've long developed, or been developing over a long period of time, this an appreciation for the damage that film in particular does and can do, and the political function it has been attached to as a genre. And similar to what Noble was just saying, like many of us, we love films, but I just have increasingly become attuned to the need to be critical of them and offer space for criticism of film that we don't see in other spaces. So I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. And very similarly, I came to Mtume Gant's work sort of indirectly, and very happy to have it, because it is. Your approach has helped me greatly, so I look forward to getting to this build here.
Peace. My name is Mtume Gant. I'm a filmmaker, artist. I've worked in the arts in many different long ways since a teenager, but I work mainly in cinema and film, mostly in narrative filmmaking. I'm also a professor of film and some cinema studies at Purchase College. I teach mostly film production in the BFA conservatory there. I do cinema studies courses once a year. The two areas that I focus in cinema studies have been in what we call third cinema, or revolution. You can go ahead. Yeah. We call third cinema or revolutionary cinema. So African, Latin American cinema, radical cinema of the U.S., things like the LA Rebellion, or even some of the white movements like people like Robert Kramer, stuff like that. And I also do teach a course in improvisation in cinema, and some of the improvisational histories in cinema, which many people underplay and kind of under research actually. And my political history, comes down to I started off when I was an actor very interested in the Black Arts Movement. And I would say the Black Arts Movement and my studies of that was probably starting my political awakening in overall in my left political awakening, and then that's stayed attached to me into all of my artistic pursuits, which then also forced me to broaden my analysis and my analytical approach to cinema, both as critic, spectator, but also just as an actual creator of the work. Yeah, so, yeah, and like, Jared's work I've been familiar with for, quite a while, and I've been happy to, get some synthesis with him and go through these analysis. So yeah, and I'm very happy to be here as well.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the two films, Origin, Ava DuVernay film. Has anyone seen Origin?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
All right, and then and American Fiction. Has anyone seen American Fiction? Okay. So what Origin is, well, the thing that got me, one of the things that got me interested in doing this is that these films are about black writers writing books. And they're a bit different because most of the time when you have writers writing books, the films themselves can be very boring. It's like they're typing, they go through this angst. There's that scene in Julia, Jane Fonda throws the typewriter out the window and all that sort of stuff. But these were, both of them are different. And the Ava DuVernay film, unfortunately, it cost $40 million. I think it made $5 million. Okay, and it was foundation funded mostly. We can get into that, which is another thing. But it's not really based. It's kind of like the writing of this famous bestseller called Caste that Isabel Wilkerson wrote. Okay, and you get an idea about the book, but it's not really about the book. It's like about the writing of the book and some of the ideas in the book. Okay. And you get Isabel's personal life. Then she's writing the book. She's putting her cousin she's really close to, and she's got, it looks like COPD, and she gradually succumbs to this, and all this is in the context of getting this book done. Okay. The performances generally are good, and it's just doing the general sort of thing. But I found the film like really uneven, and some of it kind of strange, and sometimes it bit off more than it could chew, I thought. And sometimes it's really unclear some of what's going on. There's a lot of visual analogical reasoning. So you get a visual, and you're supposed to link it up with like what you've seen before, and it kind of really doesn't work. And to me, right? And you get the whole thing about caste, which is this, it's Isabel Wilkerson's thing. Caste she calls it the origins of our discontents, right? And this recalls, Shakespeare and Freud's civilization and its discontents and that sort of thing, which I have a really big problem with, but she runs with it in the film. Ava DuVernay says that she is not too clear about this, that she agrees with this, but this is the film. But, the other thing I found out is that, just as an aside, about 13 years ago, Ava DuVernay made a film called I Will Follow. Okay, and this is where a black woman,
That's her first. That's her first film, actually.
That's her first film.
That's her first narrative film, actually, with Sally Richardson. Yeah.
Okay, and it's kind of this thing with this woman dealing with her death. People come in and help her deal with dealing with the house, going through the woman's things. So this is kind of trying, similar subject matter, and sort of dealing with, but it's a bit more weighty because she's trying to deal with a lot of issues, and she said she got foundation financing, because she wanted to do the film quickly. She wanted to be considered politically at this time, and that really didn't work out. let's start. Let's start with you two guys. Where you?
I have an immediate. So it's interesting that that is DuVernay's narrative of why she had to go to places like the Ford Foundation, because that's actually not true. The truth is she shot the film around for quite a long time, but she couldn't get studio funding for it because several of her last films have not done well. She had a major failure with her adaptation of A Wrinkle in Time,
Right.
which was a huge financial failure, and then she also had a big thing where she was going to be adapting a DC Comics piece that never. She had a $100 million deal to do that, and then that never actually even left the writing room. So she kind of went into foundational money, but I do find it very interesting that places like the Ford Foundation wanted to be a part of this kind of narrative project. And I think that's something that people in the arts community need to be really paying attention to. If you look at the history of places like the Ford Foundation and how Jared and I have been talking about this privately about history of places like the Ford Foundation and how they've shaped often what Black art gets funded and promoted, all the way from, I hate to say it, even things like the Black Arts Movement in the 60s. Those foundations, they came from, there's Ed Bullen is the great playwright from the Black Arts Movement, talked about when he's working with the New Federal Theater up in Harlem, that their money was foundation money. And when that foundation money left, Bullen's and New Federal and them were left without anything. And this is kind of one of those histories, but I don't want to digress too much. One of the things that I've noted, I'm glad you actually bring up DuVernay's earlier work, because, and the phrase that I'm about to use is not a phrase that I made up. It comes from a scholar named Linda Williams, who does a lot of analysis on melodrama. And she uses the phrase virtuous sufferers. And the idea of the melodramatic character, the sufferer, the individual sufferer, and what makes them great is their virtue, right? Their ability as an individual, and I keep pointing that word, to overcome. So yes, society will throw all these things at them, but what makes them great, what makes them triumphant is their virtue, whether it's their, individual spirit, so forth and so on. And DuVernay is consistent in these inner projects of these kind of virtuous sufferers. I will follow, she in a very small scale, this kind of upper middle class woman dealing with grief and how she kind of, picks herself up. The film she did after that, what I felt Middle of Nowhere, which I think is a very, in terms of class, is a lot of problems. This woman, dealing with the loss of her significant partner to prison because he sells drugs and things like that. And, even her, what I felt to be very problematic depiction of the Central Park Five. This idea of these five virtuous men, and not even just like their families and the way she would depict their families. She likes to stick on this kind of individualist special quality, which then, is ripe to not have any kind of critical analysis of collective action that might have helped people, or collective action that might have not helped these people. She's playing into a liberal project, into liberal individualism, into black, and then going to things like black excellence and all these things. And it is her entire project is investing in a kind of old Hollywood aesthetic trope of you can solve your problems if you tie into your own individual special thing that sits within you, right? So, her critiques of structure then become defanged, and then you get into something like Origin, which, and I'll pause and I can let Jerry jump in. It becomes extra insidious because each origin is supposed to have this grand narrative of why we are in the social situation that we're in. And it, Caste as a book, which I've never read, but I've read great criticisms. I know Black Agenda Report had a great one. Dr. CBS has another fantastic critique of the book. But it's a work where it's eliminating a material analysis of race, right, and going into a kind of it's mystical. It's like a mysticism. Race is the caste and all these things is this mystical origin that we have to accept. But it also lets the kind of class aspirations of the bourgeoisie class off the hook because it's caste. It's not anything with with social hierarchy and how capitalism and racism produces these inequalities. So it all gets wiped away. But I'll pass it to Jared. I'll probably
for me again, the first thing is that I think is, in terms of my own approach, is that all of this, I think, all of the particularly popular culture, the imposition of film specifically, is all part of that counterinsurgent psychological warfare attempt on all of us, and then specific in this case to rebrand Black histories in a very safe way. I mean, this is what I keep coming back to, that my joke is, not really a joke, but I think we are in a civilizational crisis of methodology. That the organized technologies of media, their pervasiveness, their military purpose, their origins in the military, their design to suppress radical efforts, to take the colonial projects out of, as they say, of the jungles of Vietnam and bring them into the cities in Black and brown America. All of it, I think, has to be part of the understanding of why we get origin, of why we get, and now more than ever, Disney, Netflix, the Obama production team, they're all arrayed to give, for instance, the Obamas can now extend their political purpose into the media environment, confusing the reality, suppressing potential radicalism, giving this comfortable outlet for people to project their fantasies onto. And then again, we have to, when it comes, I mentioned it last night, I can't help but always mention it, especially when she comes up. Ava DuVernay comes out of an Oprah Winfrey public relations background. Mm-hmm. Even before we get to the quality of her films. So she's coming out of that, and then when she does the film on Selma and erases Kwame Ture, I'm not aware of any, I think in my lifetime that has got to be among the more egregious acts. I don't want to overdo it. It's, I don't want to,
Bill Clinton was happy though.
Of course,
but
that's the point.
That's the point.
Because what Bill Clinton said in that moment in his speech, he acknowledged we were terrified of Kwame Ture. When The Guardian publishes that article in 2020 or whatever, and saying that the British intelligence community was looking to stop Stokely because his version of Black Power was Pan-African and scientific socialism. So it took on a global aspect to negate his message. So to see that play out in a film that, again, is also, to be fair, involving beautifully talented actors and cinematographers and lighting and audio, the stuff looks good, it sounds good, and then which I think makes interpreting the political message that much more difficult. And then because film does have, and it's always been understood that fully encapsulated, particularly in the movie theater. So in some ways, I'm almost wanting to maybe catch up on existing work or fill in some gaps in my own knowledge here, but I have to imagine that tactically, part of the move from the theater to the streaming services in people's homes has caused the ruling elite some measure of concern over the loss of the value of the movie house that it has to the particular setting it creates in capturing an audience. You can't pause it, you can't turn it down, you can't walk away without losing the entire thing. If you go to a bathroom with a concession, you lose the whole, you re-enter another world. So it's always been understood to be that fully encapsulating experience that adds to the message delivery potential. You're supposed to immerse yourself. And remember, did you all see for a while they were running those previews in movie theaters where the kids go and sit down and the seats literally become like trees, or the trees it's meant to fully, that's what it was depicting. I thought it was a perfect depiction. You're supposed to be fully immersed so that all of the messages. So yeah, so even before we get to the details of the film, and I'm happy to add on a little bit now, but I just wanted to, that for me is the important context, and then ultimately I just want to restate that again, what I was trying to say last night, for instance, is that I really do believe at this point that the only thing, the ruling elite are clear of this, the only thing holding this whole project together is its media narrative. Its ability their ability to manipulate that dominant narrative, because the fissures I do see are very real in this society, and everything you could see where it could start to crack and fall apart, but then they have that, what is it, in construction, the concrete, and lock it back up with these narratives. So that's why this stuff takes on that much more of a kind of an importance, and I think we do need to be more vigilant. Sorry, one more thing. When we get one of our biggest criticisms on our platform that we often get is, why as revolutionaries do you spend so much time critiquing pop culture? It's a waste of time. And I think the exact opposite, because I see this as their primary weaponry and their full spectrum dominance efforts, and we do need to have an analysis.
Yeah, because this is their soft power.
Absolutely.
They're very clear about this. In fact, what's the guy, Nye? He wrote a book called Soft Power, and he said this is the thing, we really can't run around just bombing people into oblivion. I mean, sometimes you got to, right? But yeah, that's his thing. He says, no, you got to use the soft power. With Selma, what ticked me off, because one time he was still Stokely Carmichael. We went to the same high school, and he came up there, and Stokely was. But then what ticked me real off, aside from that, what ticked me off with Selma is that she kind of depicted James Foreman as like this petulant teenager.
Right.
Foreman is older than Martin Luther King.
Right.
And he's the one with the real organization ability, holding SNCC together. So that like really, and I knew James Foreman, that really ticked me off personally. But some of the details in the film, one critic called, there was this somatic analogy, and what she says it takes from it's in the book, that caste, is the bones, like the infrastructure. Race is skin and flesh. And class is diction, accent, education, clothes, and then money. This is Wilkerson? This is Wilkerson. Wow. So I'm like, so it's the first thing I was listening to that, I said, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. And then I thought of, like My Fair Lady. This is where, why can't English teach their children how to speak? It's not her, what did she say? It's her speech that keeps her in the gut. Right. And so, and of course, if you've ever seen My Fair Lady, what happens is that she takes these things that, the rain in Spain falls mainly into the plain, and so she speaks perfect, and then they have this huge party, and she comes out, and this guy says, her English is too good, she can't be English, she's a princess, and she's probably from Hungary, and it's a big joke. But I'm listening to this as well, I said, this is really kind of out there to say that class is just this really, diction, like you can just dress a certain way and you're a member of a certain social or political economic class. But that's Wilkerson's, thing. The other thing with the liberal thing, I guess we can get into this with the foundations and everything, that the caste idea, right, it was taken up by the liberals in the 30s, right? And you get an American Dilemma, which Gunnar Myrdal, right, and he says it's caste. He wants to get away from race and especially from class. It's funded by the Carnegie Corporation, okay? They did not fund all the black scholars. They gave Myrdal the money, brought him over here, and then put the black scholars under him. And at one point, Ralph Bunche says, we've got a Swedish Simon Legree kind of thing going on here. He's working under him, okay? And that's what's going on. Because what happened was, to really go further back, go quickly, in 1900, the countries that really dominated the world, England, British Empire, and the US, they had these scholars and thinkers and politicians, and their thing was, that the WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant descended, the elites of those racial groups, we're the best, the white race is the finest, we're the cream of the white race, and we should run everything, and we should form a federation to run the world and bring peace, because we are superior and we're the ones to bring peace. Forget the real history of the British Empire, right? And remember, they said federation, right? Maybe you think Star Trek. So, but what happens is that breaks down with World War II, and then the Japanese expose them at the Versailles Treaty, where they want to put a racial equality clause into the 14 points, and Woodrow Wilson goes through those bizarre maneuvers and is kicked out. The rest of the darker races in the world get wind of this, and the Garvey movement spreads it. Remember, and then you get Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam is always talking about the Asiatic black man. And they've got this thing about Japan, And so what happens is that, so the ruling orders, they decide, well, we have to get all these dark people to stop talking about race and calling us names, because this is bad for us, this is bad for colleagues, this is unrest. And so they look over at India, and they say, well, caste, and they're not white, okay? And so this can get us off of this, all right? This is in Frank Furedi's book, I think it's called The Hidden War, Frank Furedi, And so you end up with liberalism talking about caste, right? And of course, now the interesting thing about all of this is that though the liberals like the civil rights movement basically didn't talk about caste at all. It becomes race. But but that's how you get into the whole liberal individualist sort of thing. And Wilkerson dismisses Oliver C. Cox's critiques of this, because even when the caste idea comes out, it's old, all right? But this is what goes on in the movie. It brings it back, it endorses it, and it says that the South was a caste society. Nazi Germany was a caste society, and then you have India, right? And Isabel Wilkerson in the movie endorses individual solutions, right? Even though Jim Crow was not defeated individually. Nazi Germany, for damn sure, wasn't. But then she brings in the Dalits, and they're clear that they're taking on collective action. And she has real Dalits speaking for themselves. There are no real black people speaking for themselves now, right?
Well, but what you're saying about the individualism and Bedkar is they become more insidious in how she uses him as a Dalit rising, because she's at his own individual greatness.
Yeah, she makes it. Yeah.
She then decontextualizes him. Wilkerson and DuVernay, they decontextualize him from his social political history, and any kind of analysis of the collective order, or maybe whatever the serendipity that could happen within the insidious structure of the caste system in India, and make it this incredible individual who stands above, and that's the individual we can all mirror for our own inspiration.
Because there's also no colonialism happening. That also got to
Right.
this.
Well, that's
right.
That thread that
Well-
would have connected, or could have been used to connect all those groups.
all those things.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
totally
but that's the fascinating thing, right? Is that with the Nazi Germany part, you know, she brings that in and tries to tie that up into Jim Crow slavery. And she has this a real
Right.
meeting took place with the whole thing about Jim Crow laws and the Nazis. The Nazis, by and large, rejected the Jim Crow laws. They said it just wouldn't work here. They also, this is an interesting sort of thing, they also would highlight lynchings in Nazi Germany and say, see, this is what those uncivilized Americans do. Okay? Things get really complicated. The real link, though, you know, she says, oh, there's a link. The real link, though, is colonialism and colonial projects. Because after 1848 in Germany, the Germans become, and these are like liberals, just and not, you know, they become really fascinated with the West, what America is doing with the West, and see this as a model. And later, this develops into conquering the East. Okay, but it's a lot older than the Nazis.
I just want to be clear, just in case somebody sees what you're saying, that is not in the movie.
There's definitely
That part
not.
is that. I just
There's
want to
no
make sure
book.
because
It's not really in the book.
It's not in
There's no colonialism.
I got you.
Really.
In the book, I got you.
There's no
I got you.
colonialism in the movie.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Right? There's no colonial, even though the slave trade involved. Right? And
Right.
the slave trade is mentioned in the movie.
that was just the particular caste formation as it applied in the United States.
States, right? It's, you know,
It just, you know, it just be that way sometimes.
I wanna. What you said about this? Could you read to me what they said that what class? What you said class was?
She said class is diction, accent, education, clothes, and then money.
Well, this is this is the, to me, what is really the insidious part of the project of the current, what I call Black Hollywood, right? This is all about social mobility and justifying social mobility within the capitalist context. They're all trying to give themselves a narrative for why their pursuits under the capitalist form are okay, and also why we, black people, should get behind it, right? Why we should get behind it. And because one of the things that struck me about Origin was this idea that a kind of cosmopolitan existence makes you more elevated. So Wilkerson's husband was white.
And a Jew, specifically.
And Jewish, thank you for reminding me of that.
Well,
Yes.
actually, not in the film, but I think in real life, he doesn't. That guy who plays him in the film
Isn't Jewish?
is Jewish. But
Oh.
the husband, I don't think really was.
Oh, I don't
the
know.
husband the husband was Southern.
But they make it
I thought in the film he's supposed to be a Jew. That's supposed to be
The
point.
guy who's
He
playing
doesn't
him
mention it.
is Jewish, but I don't think in real life he was.
oh, interesting.
But it's true. The whole
Wait,
cosmopolitan
wait.
thing.
Yeah.
But the character in the film, I thought was a Jew. You're
No, I'm
just-
saying that
he
the actor who plays the
mentions
husband.
it.
I thought
was
he
Jewish.
did.
He does mention
Because I
being
thought
a
the
Jew.
actor in real life was not a Jew. I thought he was.
Yeah.
Why do I think? Because he's from Maryland. He's from.
Yeah, you're right. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
But in the film, you're you know, because they're trying to be, it is this form, this kind of like, kind of cosmopolitanism. She's
Yeah.
shown in these spaces. She says, when the whole thing with Trayvon Martin jumps off, what does she say? She says, you know, well, he says it's racist. He says, well, everything is racist,
Everything's
dismissively.
racist. Right.
As who runs around saying everything is racist?
No, because she was saying that wasn't a lynching. It wasn't. It was something like that. Like
Yeah.
It's
Trayvon
just
wasn't really
dismissing
lynched.
it,
It's not
and
like
so she's got to
that.
come up with this
Yeah.
theory and this caste, and which is kind of like what do they say in science? The theory of everything.
Right.
It's
But
like-
one of the other interesting things is in the film she goes to no black scholars. Zero.
Yeah, it's all.
She goes to zero black scholars. She does not investigate, and if anything, the one that she goes to, she dismisses and who's dead cops, right?
Yeah,
You know?
that's in the book.
Right.
It's not even that.
It's not yet, so it's not in the film,
not even
right in the film, right? But like, I'm conflating everything with the
She just
articles I read.
ignores.
She just
ignores.
ignores.
I'm saying.
But then that becomes a directorial choice also by DuVernay to erase black scholarship and then make black scholarship in this film an individual,
Right.
right?
Except there's a trick. Well, I think they do a little something more complicated because they show what they do with black scholarship is put it in the 30s and 40s with the couple in Germany,
Right.
Who link up with the white couple at
Yes.
Harvard or wherever to do some study. But
That's the liberal individualism, the foundation, and it's also University of Chicago.
so
If you look at, because this is the thing with y'all two gonna say this brother's obsessed with the University of Chicago. Right?
No, I appreciate what you said earlier.
But the University of Chicago, right, set up by the Rockefellers, right? I mean, this is direct ruling class school, right? It's set up by the Rockefellers, period, right? So what do they get into? One of the things they push the caste thing here. They also push this caste system thing, which is still controversial in India. There's a big debate in India about just what all of that means, right? They push that. Of course, they're anti class analysis, anti-Marxist. They push the neoliberalism. And what else do they push? In sociology, you get William Judith Wilson and the declining significance of race in the 70s. And so it's like, you're looking at this, it says, wow, that's pretty neat. Y'all got kind of got it going on. You got everything going in a certain direction here, right? And but because the scholars back up the caste idea, which was really not thought up. Doesn't come really out of black sociology.
So, but what I saw in what they were doing in the film is that by having it's a reduction. I took it this way as someone admittedly somewhat within Africana studies. I took it as a suppression of black studies and a reduction of black studies to these two scholars who team up with the two white scholars to produce some soft liberal conclusion.
I could see that.
That's what so that way whether when you mentioned the directorial choice, you can avoid anything even Wilkerson would have done mentioning that wing of study in her work. You could just skip all over that, tell this nice little story, and then conclude as you want.
And what's also, and in a way, though she never, DuVernay never overtly references any intellectuals, she presents them like they're this secret intellectual class, that as if that they're the legitimate. Thus, anything else would be seen as illegitimate, right? So she's she's doing selection by omission, right? She's omitting a history and selecting now. This is the real intellectual class that you should have been paying attention to, right? And they've been kept from you. And what's kind of funky is this kind of hostility that when when they go to the South, they have to be secretive, and they're not. There's like kind of a hostility and suspiciousness towards them.
Yeah, they got a code switch.
Got a code switch with their own people,
right?
It also adds to another thing in the film that I found to be artistically the most insidious part of the film is this idea of creating everyday people's worth through presenting as some kind of superhero. I didn't make this quote. I got this off Letterboxd. There's this motif they use in the film where she re-envisions, Trayvon at the end and the scholars, and someone said it was Isabel Wilkerson getting the Force Ghost in Star Wars, right? They came back, to kind of nod at her and give her. But there's this way that these kind of superhero narratives and superheroes, which have very, authoritarian, even totalitarian, re-envisionings now. this kind of way that superheroes have been used now, and they've been deployed into popular movies. It's this, they become, it's an acceptance of the Watchmen, right? Or in this case, the Watchwoman, right? We have to accept that we need these people, it was benevolent lies, it was benevolent secrecy, right? So that if these were being secretive, if these groups were being secretive in the corner, it was for your good. Don't worry, if they were doing these things, they were, so it becomes this defense of the elite and this reasoning of the elite, and it's a noble saying, these are all noble lies, these are all noble secrets, and it's just what I find to be so funky about it all is this does not break with traditional Hollywood at all. But it breaks with the Black cinematic tradition, which was for a long time through things like the LA Rebellion and filmmakers like Wendell Harris and Bill Gunn and Kathleen Collins, realizing that a black cinematic expression cannot be done within that format. And now Black Hollywood has totally bought into that format, which is a format that is, carried on the project of a very imperial, dominant America, is the exceptional country narrative. And we've now, is the way Black Hollywood has taken it into their bones and are reproducing it. And also the last thing I'll say is, they're doing it as, this is our political action, right? This is a political action. Think about Rustin and how they market these films. They market these films as it is your political, obligation to support these works.
Well, what's her name?
Yeah,
What's her name? Who was it who said if you don't watch?
Shirley?
Was it Shirley? One of the. I thought it was also one of the Netflix African Queen films. What was the
The Woman King.
The Woman King.
Yes.
Somebody said if you don't go see this, I think what's her name said if you don't go see this.
Viola Davis.
Yeah, you're not supporting Black women. If you don't go see this, you don't support Black women. It's wow.
I was on another panel. This white activist writer said that all the activists need to see the Rustin film, and I said, look, man, I was in the A. Philip Randolph, which was set up by Randolph with George Meany for Rustin. I said, no. I know all sorts of Rustin, so you leave that alone, all right? He chilled stuff out, he went down there to the NAACP and tried to get them to get rid of Herbert Hill on the behest of George Meany, because Herbert Hill was writing articles exposing racism within the unions. So I said, no, anti-radical, anti-commie, no, sorry. And he's pacifist, yet you here you are, you end up supporting
Israel.
I don't
Supported Israel.
I don't need to get all into that. But there's another historical omission. It's mentioned in the book, but Ambedkar and Du Bois had a brief correspondence. And that is not in the movie. I'll get back to the whole thing of Black scholarship and everything. So, foremost Black sociologists, and just not mentioned in the movie. They were just 2 letters. You can read them online if you want. They're actually there. But the thing with Ambedkar, it kind of shows him, bopping through Harlem, even though that was before Harlem was, just before the Harlem Renaissance. He was gone from New York by 1916. And you get sort of kind of rightly stuff. You show him being an intellectual sitting in a thing, and it's kind of like, okay, but you don't get too much really. But then you have the Dalits come in, and then they explain, what he's about, and you're supposed to take it. But the other thing with Ambedkar and the Dalits, one writer from India called the book Orientalist. Because of the whole thing, it's in the book, it's in the movie. Arundhati Roy says this, and the Dalits say this. You get into a political thing. I did not want to get into this because you get into a lot of name calling. But the thing is that the caste system is seen as this ancient, millennium-old system that has just gone on and on. It's the worst system of oppression in the world. It's sort of timeless. And it's been called out. It says, well, this is the Orientalist rhetoric you're using. That's what the Orientalists and the missionaries said in the anti-Hinduism, and there's a lot of vituperative back and forth about how caste developed, how it came, and just what it says, is there really a caste system as the way we think of a system, right? Like there was a Jim Crow system, right? The Nazis set up a system, but I've looked at India and I'm like, something's going on here. I just don't kind of get it. I mean, it's really, is this like, are these guilds? And, and then the other thing is, Ambedkar says it wasn't racial. I just say, I'll just leave that alone. It's not as cut and dry as is made to appear, because she lets the Dalit activists speak for themselves. And
because again, the intent is not to clarify the history. It's not to expose audiences to radical and suppressed analyses. So there's all these common threads, whether it's through Ava's or the other film I know we were planning to discuss, that I think, Mtume, you kind of gave a perfect segue to. We're not supposed to get we're never meant to be introduced or given a fair coverage of anything involving, obviously, socialism, various forms of nationalism, armed struggle. All of these things are meant to be all erased as if they were never considered, engaged, all so that we can conclude, as I think, and this is where I'll, if I can perform this segue, that where I needed to be checked on my own damn platform by this dude over here, because I fell afoul of my own claimed analysis. So I'm wanting to simplify all these other brilliant and older forms of thought on this, and pay tribute to my buddy Vernon, and develop this Vernon philosophy of black media avoidance, the point of which is that no oppressed group should ever look to find itself in the colonized media environment, because it's always a misrepresentation of whatever it claims to be. So I go see American Fiction, and all they had to do is put a light-skinned, balding, bearded, chubbying, writer lamenting his career, and I was in there like, oh my God, they got my whole life on the screen. This is like they made my movie, and it was a wrap. I go home, get on my little YouTube. Everybody, black people, you gotta see this film. They finally fucked up and let a film through that we can appreciate. I even said, you owe it to yourself to get this little bit of pleasure in 90 minutes from these usually horrific. Get off the camera feeling good about myself, like I just did a good thing, saw a great movie. I don't know, was it like a day or two, and Mtume sends me email politely, no brother, I think you might need to recheck your, and the I don't remember exactly what you wrote, but the thread that I've now come to see very clearly in subsequent views and discussions with you is that to your point of a minute ago, the goal of the film, at least as I interpret it, is to justify the black bourgeoisie's treachery. And so we're supposed to see the film and see myself in the film, and then say to myself, so when you perform in your own life the treachery against your people and your community and your militant struggles and all this, you should be okay with that, because look at how hard, look at the movie, shows you how difficult it is for the black bourgeoisie to do anything. We're set up so you shouldn't judge negatively anyone from the black middle class who says, I'm making my millions for you. When you see me walking on the red carpet, see yourself and walk with me in the victory. You know what I'm saying? No, you can't taste the champagne. You can't, the truffles, darn, you ain't gonna taste it. But just see me. Yeah. And then I do really think, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all of it is meant to walk us away from all those radical isms we should be engaging on a more sustained basis. So that's what I've really appreciated about our evolving discussions. And it's important, and I'll stop here, to be in these kinds of spaces, building with these kinds of people, because even when you think you got it, you don't got it. Not by yourself. American fiction, yeah.
Okay, right. Did anyone read the book?
I read it
Because of it, yeah. I read the book, wow, it's over 20 years ago. And my thing was like, I know that there are things in this book that are not going to be on that screen.
Yeah.
And it definitely, but
this
you should, I mean, first off, it was a great
writer in general.
Great writer. So,
Yeah.
I have just one last thing, a couple last things with the DuVernay. That Star Trek, I had to look that up. With the Star Trek thing. And I said, my God. That's so, because at the end of the film that happens. I thought it was kind of like this aestheticized thing.
I mean, it still is.
It is
it is an aestheticized thing.
But I thought
she's borrowing. She's totally borrowing from the.
I thought it was like at the Yankees when you hit the home run. You go
Field of Dreams.
And so they all come out. But because it seemed with all the dead come out, and they're like saying, you got us right. You did the right.
Great job.
It's disgusting. He takes off the hood. I mean, it's really. I mean, I'll bring that back up when I want to talk. There's something about that.
The one last thing. The other thing that you mentioned online was the use of the Kodak stuff.
Oh yeah, the film style. Yes.
But this would really put me off of looking at that movie. I said, wait a minute, that's the Deep South. That's the concentration camp. That's the slave ship. Why does it look so damn beautiful? I mean, it's the Depression South. It doesn't look like the Depression South ever. No. Right? I'm like, what is it? And so, this aestheticizing all this pain and suffering.
Well, what you're getting to is a long, argument in film. I mean, there's a film, oh God, it's Gio Perez-Carval's first film, Capo, about the Holocaust. It's a film with starring Susan Strasberg, Lee Strasberg's daughter, and it's about a young Jewish woman who gets, they cut off her hair and they hide her as a non-Jew, and she becomes a capo, right? So she's becoming one of the leaders in the concentration camp. And there's this scene in the film where they aestheticize the murdering of one of the concentration camp. And then Jacques Rivette, the well-known Marxist theorist, detested it. He detested this aestheticized murdering of a Jewish person in the concentration camp. And he said, this is the most reprehensible thing I've ever seen. And it's funny, Perez-Carval who later made films like The Battle of Algiers, Burn. If you look at his films, they don't look like that after that. When he got into the kind of more like left-wing work, after Capo, he became a very different filmmaker. My theory is he took Rivette's criticism to heart. So much that, not to go too much in digression, when he did this film Ogro about the ETA people in Basque Country and depicted the murdering of Franco's number 2, that film has been suppressed. Like no one even know that movie exists. It's a phenomenal film, and it's legitimizing armed struggle of the Basque people in Spain, and it's been completely shut out of history. No one talks about it. It was the last film he ever made, and no one. But yes, you're right though. This aestheticized way of depicting these things is a long tradition. I mean, it goes back to Walter Benjamin, the aestheticization of politics, right? The aestheticization of politics. They'll allow you to create some kind of expression, right? And then you can wallow in it, and then it brings in another thing that I think is a good segue back to what Jared was talking about. You can express how you feel, right, as long as you don't go out on the street and, strike and organize or take up arms. They're totally fine with that. But what Jared brings up with American fiction, I think, is really important, and even with Origin, you can do it. Is why I always feel like you have to be suspicious You know, I go back to Augusto Boal, Theater of the Oppressed. He was always very suspicious of catharsis. There's this idea, when I was in theater school, I was always taught that catharsis was this inherent good. But it took a teacher I had to ask me, when Nazis watched Triumph of Will, did they not have cathartic experiences?
Wait, but break that down. Why would that film do that? What's in that film?
Because about emotional connection, Triumph of Will, pride, all of, seeing yourself. Riefenstahl was, very effective in being able to connect with the people and create a narrative, right? I mean, that's film. Film is an obstruction, right? It's a screen, right? You're not getting a 360 view. There's always going to be things you would omit, right? It's part of it. It is part of what it makes it beautiful and also potentially very insidious, right? It's always going to be an obstruction. So you have to be suspicious of catharsis. Brecht was also very suspicious of it as well. That's why he was also very much, suspicious of empathy as a tool for film. He said Brecht was always very big on you can't escape empathy, right? And people are going to empathize, but to make empathy the driving force of how you do your dramatics, he was very cautious of, because he felt it actually wasn't enough to have some kind of dialectic political read around film, for him, a theatrical piece, a dramatic piece. And that's the thing, I think we've been taught that if we feel or we have a cathartic moment watching something, that's the evidence that it's good for us. But we are socialized in this world in many ways, and we have to accept that, right? Like, there's a lot of things that happens to us ideologically in this world, and filmmakers and media specialists are very good at manipulating that, right? And getting us to buy into things, that I think if we think more clear sometimes, we go, oh, I don't accept that. That's really bad, right? But they use these tools to get us to buy into anything. They play on our emotions, which is for something like American Fiction, which, it's a shame because Erasure is a book that is very much an analysis of Black bourgeoisie existence and turns it into American Fiction, which becomes American Fiction, a defense of Black bourgeoisie existence and pursuit. So it's part of that same project.